Right, Uday. Let's get started. Good afternoon to all of you. We'll be covering the database lesson. Thought of moving into that because like PowerPoint, obviously you can simply go through it by yourself. I think I have shared with you the slides or rather the tute earlier, but anyhow. Thought of like completing this beforehand because this is a somewhat of a bigger lesson and a more prominent lesson, and you definitely get a question out of this in the essay part. So it's quite important that we cover this sooner. And according to what we are being told, I think in February, uh, mid-February, you'll be getting your third term test, the promotional test that brings you to grade 11. So now in my case, now some of you all had asked me like whether I'm still at school. I'm actually in the process of leaving, but still I haven't gotten my exit yet. So I'm still an employee of in Benedict's College, and I'm still your teacher. So therefore, I have a responsibility of covering your syllabus before I leave. So we'll have our online sessions, maybe not like regularly on Thursdays. I'll try my level best, and I will try to have some extra sessions maybe over the weekend also. Do try to take part today. So our intention is to cover the curriculum as soon as we can, and simply to be able to prepare you all for the exam and to get the most out of it. So let me share the screen. I'm not in a position to share my video though, but I will share my screen today. Give me a second. All right. So what is a database? Unit number 9 is about database software. I hope you'll have a printed note with you by now. If not, that's not to worry. I will send you the note slides, whatever that you're supposed to copy down. So I will not be using the time here to let you all copy the notes. So I'll be doing for a 1 hour period of time, so till 1 p.m. But by then, we'll be able to cover some parts of it. So before the next week's class, I'll be sharing with you the slides so that you all can copy and be prepared. I'll be able to explain and maybe do some paper questions, which I have also attached as a part of your tute. So you'll be able to do them as well. So a database today is a collection of logically related data that is stored in such a way that the data can be easily retrieved. Now, this is an organized set of data today. Now, in databases, we can have a collection of data like quite easily. But having a structured set of data is, I mean, it takes a bit of time and effort to put it together. Right? අපි නිකන් data ටිකක් එකතු කරන එක ලොකු වැඩක් නෙමෙයි. But ඒ වුණාට ඒක organize කරන එක. Like you organized in such a way, the data in such a way, which allows you to easily navigate and find what you're looking for is a bit difficult and time consuming. Right? So therefore, what we do is, databases, what we do is we collect the data and we tabulate them. ඒ කියන්නේ අපි table එකකට data organize කරනවා පුතේ. Right? Singular pieces of data is being tiled up in a table, which allows you to relate different pieces of data together and to be able to like interpret it in an entire story sort of a thing. That is what a database is, right? So examples අපි ගත්තොත් එහෙම, I mean real world life, like what we come across, telephone index, right? So a big book that contains like all the names of the people who own a telephone or who has a registered phone number under them. And then along with that, ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ address එක, නම. I mean, if you've gone through a directory, you probably have seen that it's organized according to the surnames alphabetical order. Right? එතකොට අපි කතා කරද්දි, like, when we sort of like look for a name, we are looking for example, Silva නම්, like you have to go through A, B, C, D, ගිහලා S එකට ඇවිල්ලා. And there are plenty of Silvas out there. And then what you do is you have to select ඒකෙත් ඇතුලේ that's again like a different level of alphabetical order, so you have to access it accordingly. And then you'll be able to find out the location, and then to verify whether this person's like it's the same person that we are referring to, address එක බලන්න පුළුවන්, and then also you can point to the phone number. So that era is now gone, but you probably have seen some reminiscence of that in your household. For ඔබ ගොඩක් වෙලාවට තියෙන land phone එකක් තියෙනවා නම් ඒකේ යට තමයි ඔක තියෙන්නේ, right? It used to be the case, but nowadays like we have all online searching capabilities, which doesn't like require us to do that. All right. So types of databases can be manual and computerized today. Manual databases කියලා කියන්නේ obviously everything is done by hand on paper, books and cupboards and all that. So printer, telephone directory, class register, what your how your attendance is being marked in classrooms. That is all done manually by hands, probably by some of you in terms of like class registers mark කරන්න ඕගොල්ලන් වෙන්නත් පුළුවන්. But anyways, you know how it works, right? When it comes to computerized databases, so here computers and other electronic devices and peripherals, barcode readers, all of these components are put together into forming a complete information system, which gathers, organizes the data in a more structured way, which allows us to easily navigate and collect the data. Right? පුතේ ටියුට් එකේ ලියා ගන්න ඕනේ දැන් නෙමෙයි. So I'll send you the slides. ඔයගලන්ට ලියන්න ඕන කරන slides එක මම ඔයගලන් group එකේ දාන්නම්. Once it is there, ඔයගලන් ටියුට් එක print කරලා ඉවර වෙලා ඒක ලියා ගන්න. හරි? So before the next week's class, complete that. හරි දැන් මෙතන ලියන්න ගියොත් ආ වෙලාවක් යන හින්දා මම එහෙම කිව්වේ. Right? All right. Yes, so computerized databases obviously more IT related, more computerized, more technical, more technological. And when it comes to the comparison between the two of them, right, you can see manual databases, it's slow in terms of retrieving data. අපිට හොයන්න ටිකක් වෙලා යනවා. Computerized faster. So contrasting, that's faster. Manual less accurate and less reliable. So it's see like okay, telephone directory, it's an exceptional case, but if you try to um let's say attendance wala, if it is manually done, now you don't have like in and out times, but usually in office premises they have always like this attendance card hari mon hari potaka liyan hari ehema tiyena, right? Most of them have gotten used to like putting the incorrect times unless and otherwise they are being observed. If they are being observed, obviously the correct times, but එවනට හරියටම වෙලාව ගොඩක් අය දාන්නේ නැහැ, right? But when it comes to like computerized methods, say imagine like you have to punch in, like for example like hold a ID card or something which identifies you as a person, or a fingerprint mechanism. So that's in time is like particularly perfectly accurate, and then the off time, like once you exit, when you place your finger, that will record the sign out time. So that's basically what accuracy means. So that can be like fraudulently manipulated, the manual method, but computerized ones are a bit more accurate, right, comparatively. And then yeah, takes more physical space. Now imagine like your records. Now we have about 2,500 kids in our class, in our school. So if we are to keep, let's say about 2-3 documents of each of them, let's imagine one එක document එකක් කියලා, your birth certificate copy or something. So if you have given your BC and there are 2,500 records, normally you have a file for you. Each student has a file, and they are being properly organized in a set of cupboards in the admin office. So it takes an entire like wall of cupboards to contain all of that information. 2,500 files is not a small thing, and keeping in mind like there can be a few documents inside. We're talking about 10,000, 15,000 documents. So to keep all of that, you need quite a big cupboard or a set of cupboards. But in computerized form, you can obviously have it stored in the cloud, which takes practically no physical space at all. Right? පොඩ්ඩක්වත් ඉඩයක් නැහැ අපිට cloud system එකක් දැම්මම. where something like Google Drive, right? So, but in a more professional, more secured sort of way. And you can have access to it easily. You can search through it. You can have AI read through your image related data and then summarize your stuff for yourself, like Google Photos. If you identify yourself in a pictorial manner, you can fetch information. Like, for example, if I were to create a collage of pictures for my kid, so I would just put his name, search by his name, and all of the images related to him will be shown, and then I can actually use those images to make a collage also, right? So, and then put in some words and you're done. It's super easy, right? But in terms of, like, imagine if you have an album full of photographs and all that, how difficult and how time consuming it is to simply go through, select or make a single or unknown, and then you have to scan it, and then you have to like put them all together. So it takes a lot of time to fetch the content, right? So and also it's difficult to update, delete, and share data when it comes to manual ones. මෙතන එක වචනයක් කියනවා පුතේ, data redundancy කියන එක. It's quite important. It's a keyword when it comes to database terminology. Redundancy කියලා කියන්නේ, redundant mean uselessly copied or duplicated, right? Unnecessarily duplicated, right? So when it comes to manual copies, you might have the same document in 5 different places, right? BC එකක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. එතකොට ඔයාගේ admin office එකේ තියෙනවා. Maybe your class teacher has one, your coaches have one. For different purposes, if you're playing multiple sports, each coach or MIC has to have one. So it's like, super, like, difficult to manage this. And then the other thing is, like, it leads to inconsistency of data. Apitamo, if it is just a record of yourself, say you change your residences from, let's say, Vattala to Kandana or Kandana to Vattala. So in that case, what happens is you're not care, like, you don't care to simply, update the record. එහෙම අවශ්‍යතාවයක් නැහැ නේ, so basically, like, sometimes your coach might notice that you're coming a bit early. Who used to be late for all practices now comes a bit early, and then notices and then asks, "Moko me කලින් එන්නේ කියලා." Like, then you say, like, අපි ළඟට ආවනේ sir. දැන් වත්තල ඉන්නේ, like, කඳාන ඉඳන් එන්න ඕනේ. Like, it's more closer, and then you can be on time, maybe a bit early also for practices. Then the coach notices and then says, ආයෙ නම් එනවා කියලා. ආගේ address එක අලුත් එක ලියා ගන්නවා and then updates the record. So out of 5 copies of your residential address, one gets updated. You never, like, class teacher කොහොමත් කියන්නේ, admin office එක කොහොමත් දන්නේ. And then in case of an emergency, like, everyone is clueless. We thought like you're in Kanana, but he's living in Vattala, all these sort of things. Anyways, but if it is a system which we are desperately trying to implement for some time now, if it is a online portal sort of a thing which allows us to easily change the stuff, like, only the authorized people, that is, that would be super easy, right? So, and then if someone wishes to access your information in the case of an emergency or some other fact, like, circumstances, you should be able to access it quite easily, right? Through an app or a portal or something, a website, right? එහෙම ගන්න පුළුවන්කම තියෙනවා. That is what the differences between computerized and manual databases are. And then analyzing the data, as I've told you earlier, is much easier in computerized data and in comparison to manual databases. Any questions over there? All right. Moving on to something called data redundancy. Let's get someone to read. Brendan, can you read this?
Unwanted duplication of data is called data redundancy. In database systems, measures are taken to minimize data redundancy as much as possible. Having data redundancy may lead to inconsistent data as well as generate anomalies, problems accessing the data.
Thank you, Vijay. So redundancy here means unwanted duplication of data, right? Unnecessarily can ඕනාට වැඩිය data copy when ඕනේ. There might be like some necessities which requires you to copy a data or keep a copy of another piece of data. That's fine. But there in when it comes to manual systems or like no, there can be computerized databases which has a normal like data duplication. Right? That is because of like proper not actually paying attention to the structure of the database. හරි කියන්නේ database structure එකේ අවුලක් නිසා සමහර වෙලාවට data duplicate වෙලා තියෙනවා වෙන්න පුළුවන්. So we'll talk about those cases later on. So we need to, I mean, this is something that we try to get rid of as soon as we can, right? Unnecessary data duplication is a big problem when it comes to databases, right? We try to get rid of it as soon as we can, as much as we can. And sometimes, as I told you, you can't eliminate it. You can do data duplication කියන එක සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම zero කරන්න බෑ. කරන්න හොඳත් නෑ සමහරලාට. Most of the time that is. But having to deal with much larger amount of data is like quite difficult. It leads to other problems like inconsistency of data. එකම එකේ copies ගොඩක් තියෙනවා නම් එකක් අප්ඩේට් වෙනවා අනිත් ඒවා ටික අප්ඩේට් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. අන්න ඒ වගේ වෙන්න පුළුවන් වෙලාවල් තියෙනවා. So we try to minimize it and then have just one master copy of the data that we are dealing with and maybe have a duplicate set or a backup in case of an emergency. Master copy එකට මොන හරි වුණොතින් කියලා අපිට copy එකක් තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. But other than that, we don't have like multiple copies at different places. Like we try not to have it. Right, great. Moving on. Now we learned about what a database is. We learned that there are two kinds of databases, manual and computerized. So we have decided that computerized databases are better than manual databases. And we learned about one major problem related to databases, which is data duplication or redundancy. Now we move on to the software, right? The types of software that we can use in order to manage such databases, right? Let's read through. Andrew from 10A, can you read?
DBMS is a special type of application software which allows the user to add, delete, update, and retrieve data from the database. This software helps the user to manage the database so that they can get the maximum benefit from the database.
Right, Vijay, thank you very much. So here, a DBMS, a database management system. That is what we officially call this sort of data software update. Now in Word or MS Word as we call it, it's basically we call it word processing software, right? In Excel and all this, those sort of software we call them as spreadsheet software. But when it comes to database software, we call them, the technical term is DBMS or database management system. So a database is the entity itself, the collection of data, but we need to have software to manage it because we're dealing with quite a bit of like individual pieces of data. So here what we do is DBMSs easily allow us to deal with the data. So what sort of operations do we do with the database? අපි database එකක් එක්ක කරන වැඩ මොනවද කියලා අහුවොත් එහෙම we might include or add new data, right? අපි නැත්තම් create කරනවා කියලා කියනවා, create new data. Or we might remove or delete an existing piece of data, right? Or we might change an already existing data. දැනට තියෙන data එකක් අපිට change කරන්න පුළුවන්. And also we might retrieve the data. කියන්නේ අපි store කරලා තියෙන data ආයෙ read කරලා ගන්නවා වෙන්න පුළුවන්. Right? Having a copy there, but just reading it, viewing it, right? So these are the types of operations that we normally do. මෙතන එක වචනයක් තිබ්බ මට කියන්න අමතකුණා. So data redundancy තියෙද්දි මේ anomalies කියලා જાතියක් එනවා. Anomaly කියලා එකක් කියලා කියන, as it's mentioned here, it's a problem or a not normal state, right? An abnormal state. So that means like if you expect the database to behave in a certain way, it doesn't. That's an anomaly, right? අපි හිතන විදිහට නැතුව ඒ විදියට අමතරව වෙන විදිහකට එයා behave කරන්න try කරනවා නම් that of course we call it consider it to be a database anomaly, right? So behaves in a not normal state. එතකොට දැන් මේ මට මේක කියද්දි මතක් වුණේ add delete update retrieve අපි එකට කියනවා CRUD instructions කියලා. නැත්නම් create read update delete ඕක තියෙන set එක. So when we try to do CRUD operations, if a database tries to misbehave, හරි ඉස්සෙල්ලා වගේ, we call it a database anomaly, right? So anyways, coming back to this, a database management system helps the user to manage the database so that they can get the maximum benefit out of the database. So then DBMS එකක් කියලා කියන එක, okay, so though we consider these two to be one unit, one entity, ඒක ඇත්තටම කෑලි දෙකක් විදියට තියෙනවා. DB, the physical database, and the DBMS itself, which allows you to easily interact. අපි මෙතන user කෙනෙක් විදියට we okay, imagine there's a educational institute such as a school, and then as the user you wish to get the let's say yeah, you need to get the list of names of the students who are coming from a certain area, let's say Kotahena, who is, let's say, who is Catholic, right? So imagine, like, there's some feast or church event or something at St. Lucia's. So we need students to take part. So just the list of names from, let's say, grade 10 and 11 who are in the vicinity of Kotahena and the surrounding area, and then also who happens to be Catholic. So like get those people, like, the list is being created, and you can instruct the sectional supervisors or the class teachers to ask these students to come on a Saturday or a Sunday or something to simply, take part and, present, create or give presents to that event or something, right? එතකොට මේක මම කිව්වේ පොඩි list එකක් ගන්න. So I'm selectively requesting the DB to give me access to those, right? So when I give that command onto the DBMS actually converts that into something highly technical and then quite difficult for us to understand, and then asks the database to retrieve that information or get that information. So මේ DB එකේ physically තියෙන තැන් වල තියෙන locations වල තියෙන data ටික එකතු කරගෙන ඇවිල්ලා the DBMS actually puts it in a very nice way and then, provides it back to us, right? That is what a DBMS does, right? So that's basically what you need to know. Examples for DBMSs, there are quite a few. What we are using is something called Microsoft Access Maker. But in A levels, they use MySQL කියන එක. And there are other professional, like, somewhat, large corporates, එහෙම නැත්නම් ලොකු databases manage කරන්න තව DBMSs ගොඩක් තියෙනවා. So these are some of the examples given. You can copy that down once the tutorials or the slides are provided. Now we are looking at MS Access as a software. It's a DBMS from Microsoft, which was first released in 1992. It's both GUI as well as CLI. I'll show you how it's being done. And the latest version is not 2016, right? So it's a bit old, the slides. I actually have an updated deck, but that's a bit පොඩ්ඩක් ruin වෙලා තියෙනවා because I had to downgrade my Office software to 2016. I'm actually using 2016. But okay, what's the latest version of MS Office?
365.
Correct. It's not Office actually. They don't call it Office කියලා කියන්නෙත් නෑ දැන්. Used to be 2021 was the last Office, technically Office version එක. But now they call it just 365. M365 නැත්නම් Microsoft 365 කියලා තමයි කියන්නේ. So they have I have access to the online version, but I don't have access to the downloadable thing. But that actually has a lot of features, particularly empowered by the Copilot of the Microsoft lage අර AI tool එක Copilot එක තමයි ගොඩක් වැඩ කරන්න තියෙන්නේ. That's how it is. So anyways, we consider, now this is important, MS Access is a type of relational database, right? Relational database එකක් කියලා අපි කියනවා. So we'll see what that is, right? In relational databases, the data is organized into tables which are linked to each other, right? So, okay, was there a version of databases where the data was not actually put into tables? Not really. They were always tables, right? හැබැයි breaking the tables into different components, again topical tables වලට break කරලා ඒවා relate කරන technique එක ගොඩක් වෙලාවට set උනේ පුතේ using common data, right? Common attributes වලින් අපි relate කරන එක පටන් ගත්තේ relational databases වල. So relationship කියන එක පටන් ගත්තේ relational databases වල as its name implies. So mainly you can just simply talk about two main terms when it comes to relational databases, right? Ultimately you can just simplify the entire concept of relational databases into two words, which are tables and relationships. All right, tables and relationships. This can be a little bit challenging for you at the beginning, so let's just avoid this for the time being. අපි ගත්තොත් මෙන්න මේ වගේ table එකක්. හරිද? මේ table එකේ පුතේ you all can see that, I mean, it's a very regular table, nothing much, nothing fancy. So we have the index number. So it's probably a student table. I don't have the heading here. Let's imagine it's a student table. The index number is there along with admission number, and then the name of the students. Okay. In that column, we have all the names. And the date of birth, it's organized in such a way, 1993%. So date, month, year sort of an organization is there, and class 11A 11B likewise, and then the telephone numbers are there. All good, like nothing out of the ordinary. Then may table එකක් කියන එක ගත්තොත් පුතේ we actually break it down into components in relational databases, right? First component or first element we consider is called a field, right? A field, usually when it comes to a table, is basically a column, right? Field එකක් කියලා කියන්නේ සාමාන්‍යයෙන් column. මෙතන diagram එකේ පොඩි misinterpretation එකක් වගේ එකක් තියෙනවා. But anyways, a column is known as a field in database terminology. Okay, A levels වලට ආපුවම ඔකට අපි කියන attribute එකක් කියලා. Right? So same thing, right? Nothing much. Field එකක් කියලා කියන පුතේ it's like if you try to fill out a form, just imagine form එකක් තියෙනවා කියලා හිතන්නකෝ. You have to fill it, right? So one of the fields are a blank line එකට අපි සාමාන්‍යයෙන් කියන්නේ field එකක් කියලා. So it says name in full. Name in full කියලා කියපුවාම in front of that may be a colon, and just imagine a bunch of dots placed there. So you have to write your name on top of the dots. So what you're doing is essentially feeding in a piece of data about yourself onto the form, right? එතකොට name කියලා කියන එක field එකක්, right? And then your date of birth is a field. Gender is a field. Phone number is a field. Likewise, there are a bunch of fields. Fields ගොඩක් එකතු වෙලා තමයි form එකක් හැදෙන්නේ. So similarly, now you can like try to imagine that's one person, එක්කෙනෙක්නේ. Imagine the entire class filled out that form. If you try to organize that data, you can gather the common types of data. For example, හැමෝගෙම admission number එක, හැමෝගෙම name එක, date of birth. You can basically put it into columns, right? As you can see in this diagram. All right. So this is how the data is being organized. All right. එතකොට මේ එක column එකකට අපි කියනවා පුතේ field එකක් කියලා. Okay. And then if you consider a record එකක් කියලා කියන්නේ a collection of field values. I mean fields කියලා කිව්වත් කමන්නේ. Fields has values. For example, each column has like a multitude of individualized numbers or names, values. So those values relating to a person, or an item or an event. If you look at the second one, the definition record එකේ කියලා තියෙන එක, a collection of fields that relates to a single person, item, or an event is called a record. Right. So, ඕක තව විදිහකින් කිව්වොතින්, now you all have record books, right? Student record books, SRBs as we call them. The first couple of pages, the first inner front page, right? Front inner as we call it, and then the first page itself, and then like it's all about your data, right? Your photographs, your classes, like which you have been in from grade 1, and your full name and your preferred name, your parents' names, and your date of birth, all of this, like addresses, everything is on the record book, right? So imagine all of that pieces of data put into a single row. එක row එකකට දැම්ම කියලා. So it's all that නේ. තොර අපි මෙතන ගත්තොත් පුතේ, this kind of, gives us the impression. For example, if you're pointing at Sandun, it's a bit, hold on. Give me a second. It's okay. So all of this information, or like what we talk about, is relating to one person. If you are dealing with library books, table it's for a student. If you are thinking of a library and the book table, we're talking about an item. If we talk about in the library scenario, someone, a member borrowing a book is considered to be an event. So that event needs to be recorded. So we can, actually trace to whom the book was lended out, and then who is supposed to return it on what day and all that. So ඒක event එකක් අපි record කරන්න. So each of these records, in very simple terms, rows, are really relating to a particular person or an item or an event or a concept, right? Hari, table කියලා කියන පුතේ, obviously it's a collection of records. So අපි individually ගත්තොත් මෙතන, we can bunch up a bunch of, like, collection of fields relating to one person or an item or an event and consider that to be a record. Fields ගොඩක් එකතු කරලා අපිට එක record එකක් හදන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ වගේ records ගොඩක් එකතු කරලා we can create a table. Record is a row, a bunch of rows constitutes a table. A bunch of tables put together creates something known as a database. Tables api eva relate karanna one, but ultimately we can create the database. This is the hierarchy of the construction of a database. Right? Is this clear for any questions?
Yes, sir.
Great. So again, just a reminder, field එකක් කියන්නේ column එකක්, record එකක් කියලා කියන්නේ row එකක්. Now can you tell me the number of fields in this table? You can voice out. You can turn on your mic and tell me the answer. How many fields are there in this table? The one that you're seeing now.
15. 16.
Fields. Yeah. Okay. Again, I'm getting some answers. The others?
5.
All right. It's 5, right, Pude? Fields can columns, Pude. So how many columns? Not individual values. Again, I told you, like, this is a bit of a misleading thing here, right? We consider the columns to be the fields. All right. So there are 5 columns, which gives us 5 fields. Make a සාමාන්‍යයෙන් අහන ප්‍රශ්නයක්. How many fields and records are there in this particular table කියලා you should be able to answer. Fields is columns. R කියන එක set නේ, records and row කියන එක. So rows are records. How many records in this table, පුතේ?
4.
3.
4.
Right, good. Now we tend to count this one as well. It's a normal දෙයක්. Like, nothing worrying about that. මේක ඇවිල්ලා පුතේ headers නේ, headings ටිකනේ. Right? We don't actually count that. That is not a piece of data or something to do with a person. We just leave that out and count the rest of the rows. In that case, it would be 3, right? All good, understood? Right. So basically, when you count the number of records, do not count the header row. Okay. So in this case, that would be 3. Good. Components of a DBMS. The following types of objects allow us to interact with a database. Then we are very particular about Microsoft Excel, sorry, Access. So we are essentially talking about Microsoft Access now, not the general concept of databases, right? Now in Microsoft Access, we have 4 major components, super important stuff, right? එකක් තමයි, the main component would be the tables. Right? Table එකක් කියන එක තමයි අපේ තියෙන mainම component එක, so that we can actually store the data into these tables. The primary component of any database would be a table. Now, in Access, there are 3 other queries කියන එකත් ගොඩක් කලාවට තියෙනවා අනෙක් databases වල. Forms and reports are additional stuff that is provided along with Microsoft Access to allow us to create a complete solution which actually does something. කියන්නේ අපි ඇත්තටම මේ සාමාන්‍යයෙන් අපි ඔය system එකක් හදද්දි පුතේ, in order to create the front end or the user interface UI එක හදන්න අපිට එක language එකක් පාවිච්චි කරන්න වෙනවා. Imagine if we are dealing with a let's say a web-based solution. Right. So web interface එක හදන්න, you obviously have to use HTML, CSS, can use PHP, ASP, all these sort of like languages, right? And other like platforms and everything. So that is your front end. But when it comes to the database has to be done using a database, management system, probably using MySQL, hari නැත්නම් Firebase, hari මොකක් හරි වෙන language එකක්, sorry, DBMS එකක් use කරන්න වෙනවා. Normally, for those sort of databases, we use something called SQL or SQL language. It's a language. It's something like a programming language, but it's a declarative one, which allows us to easily like get the stuff that we require. අපි නිකන් කිව්වම මේක ඕනේ කියලා it provides us. Like I'll show you a few commands on how to run SQL also. But anyways, ඒ ඇවිල්ලා සාමාන්‍යයෙන් approach එක. Like if we are to professionally develop an information system, your inputs forms කියන part එක වෙනම language එකක්. Tables and queries is a different language. Reporting is done by a different language. So accumulate like a culmination of what you call languages and technologies has to be put together in order to create a complete information system. හැබැයි now Microsoft Access is not meant to be a really big professional web DBMS, right? It's meant to provide you with normal office related work, and then probably to organize your own personal data in a database tabular manner, right? ඒ නිසා මේගොල්ලන් අපිට expect කරන්න නැහැ අපෙන් like a lot of programming knowledge and all that. As a result, they have all like included forms and reports as a part of MS Access itself, so that we can actually create our own stuff without having to rely on any other programming knowledge and other languages and all that. හරි, මේ ඔක්කොම ටික අපිට එකට in one place we are capable of experiencing in like through Microsoft Access. So that is considered to be an advantage. සාමාන්‍යයෙන් අපි කරන්න පුතේ, as I've told you earlier, when you fill out a form, you're inserting something. That means you're submitting something onto a person or an institute or like a system or whatever. Like you're inserting some values. You probably have filled out online forms a lot. So what you do is at the end of the procedure, like you have to press the submit button. when you do that, all that data what you have been typing in will be sent onto the server, right? Where it will be stored into a tabulated form. දැන් ඔයගොල්ලන් Google Forms පාවිච්චි කරලා තියෙනවා නෝ Microsoft Forms වල. The resultant can be seen through an Excel document. Excel sheet එකක අපි ගත්ත results ටික පෙන්නනවා. Right? So that's where the final resting place of the data happens to be. Of course, with Excel, like spreadsheets or whatever, you can actually do all sorts of searching, sorting, and all sorts of things, right? ඒක එතනට ආවට පස්සේ you can do all of this. අන්න ඒක තමයි මෙතන කියන්නේ. Once the tables are being populated with the data, you can use conditions and commands in order to shortlist the given set of data. අපිට ඕන විදිහට අර මම ඉස්සෙල්ලා කිව්වා වගේ students who are in the faith of like Roman Catholic, who are in the vicinity of Kotahena or in the surrounding areas are being listed down. අපි කිව්වොත් එහෙම those students who have lower marks in mathematics, less than let's say 50 කියලා, less than 50 marks are selected for an extra class done in school or done at school, like after school වගේ mark හරියක්. So to basically uplift the results of the O-level upcoming O-level exam, right? එහෙම එකක් අපි කරොත්, then obviously like you have to once the I mean you obviously need to have the data stored in the first place. Data ටික මෙතන තියෙන්න ඕනේ. Mark sheets ඔක්කොම ටික මෙතනට දාලා තියෙන්න ඕනේ. But once you do, that data can be brought in, searched through, filtered, and then you can get in and prepare a nice looking report with all the logos, headers, and all that, and which can be submitted to the management for approval. Understand? So කෙලින්ම table එකේ data ටික අපිට print කරන්න පුළුවන් report එකක් විදියට. එහෙම නැත්නම් you can shortlist, you can select according to your requirement and then send it to prepare a report also. Both ways is possible. Right? So these are the four major components. Now the forms කියන එක අපිට data view කරන්නත් පුළුවන්, individualized data, but this is a main form of input. Make input එකක්. This is where the storing happens, right? Storage. This is where the processing happens because we are shortlisting based on a set of conditions. And then finally, the output is done in the form of a report. Understand? So all of this, අපි නිකන් අර කියන්නේ input process output model එක, the input process output storage model එක, it's the same thing. Right? So forms for input, tables to store the data, storage, queries for processing, and reports for output. Right? Any questions for that? All right. So a lot of listening, I know, but just for 10 more minutes, keep your attention. We'll be winding up soon. Right. Starting off with tables. A table is considered as the most important object of a database. A relational database may consist of one or more tables depending on the level of details that needs to be stored. Now, if we just, try to brainstorm, let's consider something like a school, right? නැත්නම් library එකක් කියලා හිතමු. Library එකකට මොන වගේ tables ද පුතේ ඕන වෙන්නේ? Right? Can you all just, give me, okay, let's put it this way. The major topics that we organize the data under when it comes to a library database. Right. මොන වගේ data ද පුතේ ඕන වෙන්නේ? So
Genres.
library na, sorry පුතේ. Yes, go ahead.
Genres.
Yes, genres relating to books or categories කියලා අපි දාමු. Hold on. Give me a second. be able to, yeah. Library. Like library එකක, yes, what you said was genres. Like අපි මෙහෙම කරමු පුතේ. Like the major topic under which genres or anything else comes in would be books, right? Right. Books කියන එකනේ අපේ main topic එක වෙන්නේ. So book එක ඇතුලේ what you are saying is correct. So genres
Authors,
would be a piece of data that comes under each book. So let's just start there. What else do we have to store in terms of a book? නිකන් කියන්න බලන්න.
author,
You can either send me a chat message or else you can voice your answer. Either ways. What sort of data should we store about books? Yes, author. Correct. What else? Letter as in පුතේ. You mean the language, is it? Book එකක් ගැන මොන වගේ details අපිට ඕන වෙන්නේ? You obviously need a title, right? Title කියන පොතේ නමක් තියෙන්න ඕනනේ. Right, the name of the book. What else? Yes, ISBN, yes, they know. Very true. International standard book number and the publisher, yes. Who published it? Similar to what you have as your admission number, අපි සාමාන්‍ය එකක් තියාගන්න book ID කියලා එකක්. This is different from the ISBN because there can be multiple copies of the same book නේ. With මඩොල් දුව කියන book එක, there can be 3 copies or 5 copies of it. So each model duo has to have a different book ID so that we can differentiate amongst them. ISBN is the same, but book ID should be different. Something to individually identify each book. Language, correct. Very good. Right. What else? Api books hari seems to be fine. We have quite a bit of information. What else would be the information that we need to store about a library? මොන වගේ topics ගැනද අපි store කරන්නේ? Borrowers, yeah. Let's call them members. Right? Those who become members are capable of borrowing books. Very good. Very true. Yes. Yeah. About borrowings and borrowers, yes. Date given to the member, yes. Let's, yeah, of course. අපිට දාන්න පුළුවන් එක join date කියලා. What else about members? Let's focus on this for a while. Yes, newspapers, correct. So those are the types of, so මෙතන අපිට දාන්න පුළුවන් books වලට අමතරව newspapers කියලාත්, but if you are keeping track of, you know, each newspaper and all that, we probably won't, because newspapers are highly disposable elements. You don't keep it for years and all that. We might. Yes, member ID, of course. Member ID. So that's a similar thing related to book ID වගේ එකක්, which allows us to have, identify each member uniquely. Correct. Articles, articles. You mean like newspaper articles or? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Posters, articles, newspapers. They're kind of like something that you don't need to actually store data. Right. So let's focus on members for a while. Borrow history. That is a report, technically. We don't store directly the data about members, but ultimately ගන්න එකක්. Demographic information such as, let's say, ethnicities, let's go with, say, the date of birth might be a necessity, right? DOB. obviously the name of the person. For demographic information, as you mentioned, we might have to have the gender, nationality also maybe. These days, like, these are actually like the CVs වලටත් ගොඩක් වෙලාවට දැන් gender කියන එක දාන්නෙත් නැහැ, because they are like in Sri Lanka, of course, like we are still traditional and we're sort of using all this. But like what they say is like, we don't need what your gender is. I mean, there are lots of gender related problems happening in the European and Americas, Europe and Americas. So like they don't want to mention anything to do with gender, like, all sorts of things. Um, and also nationality, the race, the religion, all of these are discriminative factors. ඒ නිසා ඒවා දැන් ගොඩක් වෙලාවට CVs වලට දාන්නෙත් නැති scene එකක් තියෙනවා. But here again, like I told you, like, we are very traditional. We expect them to be there as an employee also, but anyways, that can be the case. Borrowed, okay, so nationality, date of birth, address, contact details on it, right? Address and phone number, right? Maybe something to do with අපි referee කෙනෙක් හරි කවුරු හරි or guarantor කෙනෙක්. Somewhat like, I'm not sure about the spellings, but something like that. In case if the member becomes like, I mean, goes as in like, in a way that you can't approach him or contact him or something, like, you still have to have some bit of guarantee to, get the books or get some compensation for it. So that's how it is. And also what you all have been talking about, borrowing. So borrowing basically is an event, right? So books being borrowed by members. Not really. This is not an ER diagram. ER diagram has its own notation. This is just, for the sake of understanding මේක කොහොමද එන්නේ කියලා, right? For people who are wondering what an ER diagram is, it's actually a database design tool that we use to create databases, right? So can අපි database එකක් හදන්න අපි එකපාර ඩොග් ගාලා ඉඳගෙන computer එකේ දඩබඩ ගාලා code කරන්න නෑ පුතේ. We have to plan it, something like what I'm doing right now, but in a more organized manner. There are formal notations, chain model, crow model කියලා එක එක જાති ඒවා තියෙනවා, which allows us to, create the ER diagram in the best possible way, right? So this is not an ER diagram by any means, right? So borrowing කෙනෙක් ගත්තොත්, okay, so who borrowed it? The member ID. We need to keep track of who has borrowed it, right? And then also, what did this person borrow? That means the book ID, right? When did he borrow it, or he or she borrowed it? So but basically borrow dates, and when is this person supposed to return it? මේක නම් ඕනෙත් නැහැ හැබැයි return date, because the computer can actually calculate. Yes. And yeah, we can also mention maybe some form of remark. Remark එකක් දාන්න පුළුවන් as to the condition. Yes. Penalties පුතේ, oh yeah, ඒකේ දාන්න පුළුවන් overdue amount එක මොකක් හරි එහෙම එකක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. And there can also be, which reminds me, like, there can also be a payment related thing, right? Payment is also an event. අනිත් එක මේකට sorry මේ දාන්න ඕන පුතේ borrow ID එකක් තියෙනවා. Each borrowing is considered to be its own individual entity. Payments ගත්තොත් there can be a payment ID. You can see this ID thing in all tables, so just make a note of that. Amounts, කවුද pay කරේ කියන එක member ID reason. This can be a pay like a membership renewal fee or a penalty, overdue penalty එකක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. Correct date, yes. Right, something like that. එතකොට මේ වගේ now we just offhand like try to organize the contents. Now each of these topics මම මේ කොටු කරලා තියෙන topic හැම එකක්ම this becomes a table, right? And all of these are basically columns පුතේ. ඒ කියන්නේ අපි fields විදියට consider කරන ඒවා තමයි මේ columns විදියට දාන්නේ. So I can create a simple table which has a few books listed down. So this is how the databases are created, right? This is the design phase, and then thereafter it requires us to basically move on to the other stuff. Right. Api මේ ටික අනිත් දවසේ කරමු. That's past time. Any questions from what we did so far? All right, let's wind up for the day today. So next week අපි ගොඩක් වෙලාවට Thursday මේ වෙලාවම ගමු. But in case if we I mean there's quite a bit of content to be done. So we're at slide number, hold on. Where are we now? 18 or 48, so there's quite a bit of a distance to go. So මේ ටිකම ඔයගලන්ට දාන්නම් up to what we have done so far. And then also the recording, I'll make it available maybe tomorrow, I guess. But anyways, just go through it once again if you want to, or pause it and do that also. So let's wind up for the day today. Thank you very much for joining in, everyone. Take care, stay safe. God bless you.
Thank you, sir. God bless you.
God bless
Thank you,
you.
sir. God bless
Thank
you.
you.
God bless you.
Thank you, sir. God bless you.
God bless you, Uday.